Of course, as a Cavs fan, we are fighting for our lives right now, our futures, as Donovan Mitchell. Well, I'll say this: if we don't get out the first round, Donovan Mitchell's gone, Jarrett Allen's gone, and and probably JB Bickerstaff's gone. So it's going to be a very busy week here on the podcast. For the first time ever, we're going to have 5 different episodes this week. For reference, it's about half of that on a week-to-week basis. But today, we're going to have the NBA playoff power rankings based on how likely I think they are to win the NBA championship. But it's a good point to throw out there. From Wednesday till Friday, we're going to have 4 more podcasts this week, as I mentioned. Tomorrow, we're going to have our final mock draft, first round, with some trades involved. It's going to be fun, so tune in tomorrow. But on Thursday, it's for the beginners. If you don't know much about college football, you still want to tune in, I'm going to be giving you my top 5 players at each and every position. So if you don't know anything about the NFL draft, it's a great way to tune in, get in the know-how, and of course, it's good to know some of these names ahead of draft night. And for Friday, we're going to be doing day 1 winners and losers and a day 2 mock draft immediately after round 1 of the NFL draft. So a lot of content coming your guys' way this week. But without further ado, let's get back on track and talk about these NBA playoff teams. Starting at number 16, and please, please, please listen to me when I say this. From 13 to 16, that's 4 different teams. View these teams that are on the same slide as tiers, of course, and as we move up the ladder, more and more so likely that those teams can win the NBA championship. For the Miami Heat, it's really because of Jimmy Butler, and it seems low even, right, without Jimmy Butler here to be at the very bottom of everybody that's in the playoffs. But again, view these teams in tiers. For the Miami Heat, though, they're down 0-1 to the Boston Celtics. They play Game 2 today as I'm recording this video. But again, Jaime Jaquez has looked good. Bam Adebayo has shown flashes. Tyler Hero can't throw a rock in the ocean consistently. But this team is they're just undermanned, right? Going into a series against Boston, where even if they had Jimmy Butler, they would still be undermanned. And now when you don't have your best player, a guy that turns his game up in the playoffs, and he's one of the best playoff performers we know in the NBA, it's incredibly tough to even fathom getting a game in this series against, again, statistically, the 3rd best basketball team of all time in the Boston Celtics. Of course, that's based off of net rating, and we'll talk about that later with the Celtics. The Miami Heat, again, you would have to go on another miracle run, but this time without Jimmy Butler, I don't see it happening. You're at number 16. For number 15, we're going to have the Orlando Magic. Right now, they're down 0-2 to the Cavaliers. And talk about not being able to throw a rock in the ocean. This is a team that, well, hey, I went to game 1 of this series. I'm a Cavs fan, and they had 56 points going into the 4th quarter. It's 2024. You don't see that in the NBA, even in most playoff series. The Magic right now are struggling to score the ball outside of Paolo Banchero, and they just need some outside shooting desperately. I mean, we worried about that going into the postseason. Who's going to be able to space the floor and make the life easier for guys like Paolo and Franz to attack the basket? And they haven't had that consistently, right? I mean, John Isaac's knocked down a couple threes so far. Wendell Carter has knocked down a couple threes so far. But overall, as a unit, they don't have enough shooting. Now, if they can turn it around, of course, they could be this young and fun basketball team that we watched throughout the regular season. But as of right now, they'd have to go through the Cavs, most likely Boston, and whoever comes out of that Knicks and or again, one of the bottom 4 teams in the East. I don't see it happening from Orlando, but again, they didn't really have any expectations coming into the postseason. We're just happy that they were there. And of course, they have the best theme song in the NBA. At number 14, we have the Indiana Pacers, and it might come as a shock, but again, I didn't have this team winning the series with or without Giannis, and that might be a hot take, but the Indiana Pacers are down 0-1 to the Milwaukee Bucks. Tyrese Halliburton has not been the same point guard that we saw early in the season where he looked like an all-NBA first-team point guard. But again, he came back early from that hamstring injury, and I think he's still fighting through it to this day because it never properly healed. But this is a team that, again, they get up and down. They shoot a lot of threes, and it's either going to win them every game or it's going to lose them every game for the simple fact that I talked about this on Saturday when I did my first-round playoff predictions. This team has maybe the most range in the NBA as far as a series-to-series basis, where if they're running up and down and they're hitting their threes and everything's clicking, they're going to sweep every single team they run into, including Boston, including Denver, right? But again, if they get cold like they did in that Milwaukee game in stretches, they're going to lose the game and they're going to get down a lot of points very quickly. It's just their brand of basketball. It's live and die by the three, and it's just very risky to play in the playoffs, especially when you can't eventually slow the game down and attack the basket. But for the Indiana Pacers, it's scary to think that Dame for a quarter and a half really outscored this team by himself. Of course, when it was 35 points for Damian Lillard in that first half, incredible first half. But it's scary to think that this team's only going to get better when Giannis returns. But we'll save that talk for the Milwaukee Bucks later. For the Indiana Pacers, though, they would have to go through the Milwaukee Bucks. They would have to go through the Knicks and the Sixers. I can't see them winning any of those series. And then they would have to hypothetically probably beat Boston to get to the NBA Finals. Again, view these teams in tiers, but the Pacers, they have a very tough road to the Western or to the NBA Finals. I just can't see it happening. But who knows? Rick Carlisle's done it before with the Dallas Mavericks. For the number 13, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. It all depends on how fast Zion gets back to the court. They're down 0-1, and they were in the game with the Oklahoma City Thunder. I said it was going to be a 7-game series because this Pelicans team, for the majority of the year, was a top 4 seed in the Western Conference. They just played really bad basketball, and they had some injuries with Brandon Ingram down the stretch of the regular season, which made them fall into the play-in. But this is a Pelicans team that defensively they have it. They have the star power. And of course, I really like their coaching staff as well, led by Willie Green. This is a team that can make things interesting. And at the very worst, they're going to make this a very tough first round series for OKC. And OKC is going to have a lot more mileage on their tanks than they would want out of a first round series. And it's because New Orleans is a very interesting team. Now, hypothetically, if everything goes right for New Orleans and they get out the first round, let's say Zion returns for game 2 or game 3. If they get out the first round, then, it can be interesting because then you play a team like the LA Clippers, right? A team that the Pelicans had their number in the regular season. Or the Dallas Mavericks, of course. We've seen that if Luka and Kyrie, they're going to put up 80 to 89 points a game. But outside of those guys putting up 90 points a game between the two of them, who else is going to step up, right? And the Pelicans, I think, are seeing the blueprint right now if they were to focus on the Mavericks or match up with the Mavericks in the second round. But again, we'll talk about the Mavericks and maybe if they can bounce back later down the list. For the Pelicans, I think obviously it's going to be very interesting first round, but they would have a murderer's row ahead of them. And with Zion not always being there and CJ and Brandon Ingram being inconsistent as of late, I don't know if the Pelicans have enough to get over the top. At number 12, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers currently up 2-0 against the Orlando Magic. Of course, as a Cavs fan, we are fighting for our lives right now, our futures. As Donovan Mitchell, well, I'll say this, if we don't get out the first round, Donovan Mitchell's gone, Jarrett Allen's gone, and and probably JB Bickerstaff's gone. So we're going to be going into a future yet again where it's just Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, who those two guys have shown flashes, but they haven't grown into superstars yet, right? Of course, Evan Mobley is younger as far as his timeline, but this is a team that a lot can change if we don't get out this first round. And even, hey, if we go into the second round and get swept, a lot can still change going into our futures. It all depends on Donovan Mitchell. So as of right now, though, we are playing really, really good defense. And it all starts with Jarrett Allen. I mean, Jarrett Allen has had 2 games with 15-plus points and 15-plus rebounds in back-to-back games. The dude has been amazing. He's been the anchor of our defense. And if he can play like this, we're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And I think if Jarrett Allen, again, plays like this, the lights are never going to be too bright for him, and we're going to have a chance in the series against Boston. But outside of Jarrett Allen, Donovan Mitchell has, of course, been his usual self. He's really, when times get tough for this offense and we're going through a bit of a dry spell, Donovan Mitchell says, hey, give me the ball and get out the way. I'm going to get us back on track, right? And he's done a really good job of that in the 2 games against the Orlando Magic. For Darius Garland, this is a guy that he doesn't play well when we're behind. If we're behind, he turns into a shot chucker. But when we're up in games, Darius Garland, that's when he shows his magic. That's when he starts to, get more confident in his game. And of course, either attack the ball or shoot threes or just become aggressive more so offensively is what I'm getting at here. And Darius Garland, when we're up, he's an amazing player. He's fun to watch. When we're down, he might be the most frustrating player on the planet to watch as a Cavs fan. But Evan Mobley had a great game 1, came back down to earth game 2. Regardless, this team, we have the defense to compete with anybody, right? but it's the offense outside of Donovan Mitchell that I worry about. If a team like Boston throws Drew Holiday on Donovan Mitchell, who else is going to step up? Are we going to expect Garland and Mobley to carry us through a series offensively, or Max Strus? I don't know. I don't know if we're going to have enough firepower offensively to match up with the teams ahead of us as far as a 7-game series when it gets down to the nitty gritty. And again, as far as winning an NBA championship. At number 11, it's the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's because of the health of Joel Embiid. If he was healthy and if he was in, even when he came back from injury and he was just that version, if he didn't re-injure himself in the playoffs, I would probably have this team higher. But this team is down 0-2 to the Knicks. They just lost in very controversial fashion. I mean, the refs they were on one yesterday as they had a very bad ending to the Knicks and Sixers game. And then they also had a very bad ending to the Lakers and Nuggets game. The Sixers definitely got the bad end of the stick yesterday, but being down 0-2 to the Knicks, a very tough defensive team, it forces the Sixers team to win 4 of the next 5 games. And you're going to have to get hot, and you're going to have to start winning games as of 2 days from now. This is a team that's going to have to win 4 of the next 5. It's incredibly hard to do. The odds and the history behind it are not in their favor. The Sixers, again, with Joel Embiid healthy, they had an argument, of course, to make it pretty far in the Eastern Conference. But as of right now, the Sixers, and being down 0-2 and Joel Embiid not being 100%, I don't know if they're going to have what it takes to come back in this series against the Knicks. Now, if they do, they're going to be gassed going into a second-round series against the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis, or a team in the Indiana Pacers that finally figured out, and they're a high-powered offense. It's going to be a very tough road for the Sixers team. Again, eventually, they're going to have to run through Boston. And is Joel Embiid going to hold up into the Eastern Conference Finals? I don't know. And if you go on to that, if you go past that point, is he going to be able to hold up against any of the Western Conference teams, saying that there's that much mileage on his body being at 50, 60, 70%? I don't know. So as of right now, again, view these teams in tiers, but the Sixers at number 11. At number 10, it's the Los Angeles Lakers, like I mentioned. Got the bad end of the stick yesterday. They blew a 20-point lead, and a lot of it, well, I'll say half of it, was because of the referees. It was a lot of bad ref decisions down the stretch of the game, or at least non-calls. But however, this Lakers team, if they played like they did in that first half for the entirety of the game, this is a team that I would probably have in the top 5, in all honesty. But this is a team that just got too comfortable and they got too complacent. And again, if as a non-Cavs fan, as just a LeBron fan, right? He played in Cleveland for a while. This is a team that played, in my opinion, a perfect half of basketball, and they still lost the game. They were up by double digits going into halftime. Again, Anthony Davis was tiring out Jokic. He was going after him each and every possession, and in typical Laker fashion, they went away from that in the second half. For what reason? Your guess is as good as mine. Anthony Davis attempted 1 shot or 2 shots in the fourth quarter against Jokic, which that was their bread and butter all game. This Lakers team made a lot of questionable decisions. Of course, they didn't get a lot of calls to go their way. But as far as their outlook going forward, this is a team that would have to win 4 of the next 5 games against the reigning NBA champions, a team that they've lost the last 10 straight games to in the Denver Nuggets. And then they would have to go on and, of course, face the murderer's row of the Western Conference. If this team is at 1-1 right now with the Denver Nuggets, I have them a lot higher. And I'm looking at them a completely different as far as if they can win this series, they have a chance to go all the way. Now, it's so unlikely that you can win 4 out of 5 straight games against the reigning champions, a team that, again, looks as dominant as ever in the Denver Nuggets. Again, if you really look at the game, the Denver Nuggets, Jamal Murray was like 3 of 15 going into that fourth quarter, and he turned it around and hit the game-winning shot with the game on the line. Even when Jamal Murray's having one of his worst nights, this team was still in the game. They still fought back into the game, and they still won it against a team that had a perfect first half. This Nuggets team is so talented, and for that reason, if this series was 1-1 and the Lakers were able to come out on top in that series, I'd say, hey, the high of beating that team, that team that good, the Lakers would have had a chance to go all the way, is all I'm going to say. But winning 4 of the next 5 seems impossible for the Los Angeles Lakers. But who knows? LeBron has come back from a few deficits before. At number 9, it's going to be the most controversial take of the video, but stick with me here. It is because of their youth in the Oklahoma City Thunder. You're going to realize when we get to these top 8 teams, all these teams have an argument. From 9-1, I can see all of these teams getting hot at the right time and winning the NBA Finals. So again, stick with me here. Right now, they're up 1-0 against the New Orleans Pelicans. Shea showed us excellence late in that game. And of course, he had an and one basically to win the game. And of course, this team has game 2 tonight here against the Pelicans. But my worry with this team is their youth. And again, I know if you're a good basketball team, it doesn't matter how much youth you have. But the fact that they're going to have to go through New Orleans, and this is going to be a 6-7 game series, in my opinion, then you're going to have to face a team like Dallas or a team like the Los Angeles Clippers. I'm probably going to take Dallas or the Clippers in that series. But if they make it through that, then you're going to have to face Denver. Denver seems unbeatable at the moment. So really, I can't see a path where OKC puts it all together and wins this Western Conference, let alone going to the finals against a Boston team where, again, technically, statistically, the third best basketball team of all time. I don't know if OKC with their youth can get it done going all the way to the NBA Finals and winning the championship, which is what today's video is made about. At number 8, we have the Milwaukee Bucks, and again, it depends on the health of Giannis Antetokounmpo. You're seeing a trend here where it depends on certain people's health. I know at this point in the season, everybody's banged up, but as of right now, the Milwaukee Bucks do not have a chance to win the NBA Finals without Giannis Antetokounmpo. Good news is that he's going to be able to return, what they're saying, by probably by game 3. But right now, they're 1-0 against the Indiana Pacers, and Damian Lillard had a 35-point first half. Second half, put up a big goose egg as far as point totals, but again, he didn't have the aggression to, as far as, I don't need to score as much. I just need to get my teammates involved and help them get confident going forward in this series. Damian Lillard, he's been around, he's done that. He's drug a Pacers team, he's drug a Blazers team to the Western Conference Finals before. Now, we won't talk about how they did, but Damian Lillard is one of the most special playoff players that we have in the league today. He's, of course, one of the most clutch players we have as well. If Giannis can come back and Dame can maintain this level, this team's going to be scary because Giannis might need a game or two to get back into game shape, especially playoff shape, and get his confidence back under him. And if Dame can continue at this level and carry this team and Giannis just gives them enough, this team is going to get out of this first round pretty easily. And then going into the second round, let's say Dame starts to come back down to earth. And instead of dropping 30 points a game, he's dropping 20 points a game. Giannis, by that point, should be able to get back to his full form and take over and be the Giannis, a top 3 player in the world that we know he can be. So with that being said, I mean, again, not to mention, Chris Middleton's playing some of his best basketball in the last couple of years. Bobby Portis has added to his bag, and he actually has somewhat of a go-to ability in this Bucks offense. Brook Lopez defensively is still there, even at 400 years old. Brook Lopez is still getting it done. I do worry about the depth of this team, though, as far as they don't have that go-to guy off the bench. However, this is a team that Giannis is going to play nearly every minute. Dame's going to play nearly every minute. So this is a team that is going to have a star player on the court at all times. For number 7, we have the Phoenix Suns. They're down 0-1 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And it really comes down to this is a team that has, if we just look at talent-wise of players, they have the most talented offense in the league with Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant. Of course, you can throw in other guys. Grayson Allen led the league in three-point percentage. And then you have Nurkic, of course, an underrated center. This is a team that has everything as far as a talent perspective. But then when you look at this talented offense, they have the worst fourth quarter offense in the NBA. And then they have a subpar defense at that. So to me, for those 2 reasons, I don't know if they're going to make it out this series. And I don't know if they can make it far into the playoffs. Now, I will say this. If they can turn it around against Minnesota, if they can steal home court and then eventually win the series, you're going against Denver, most likely. And then you play Denver. You had Denver's number throughout the regular season. And you found out some stuff last postseason. Phoenix has the firepower offensively to keep up with Denver. And of course, when you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in a 7-game series, period, doesn't matter who you're playing, you have a pretty good shot to win. So if you play Denver, it seems like you have their number. You figured something out. If you can tire Jokic out, Nurkic, if he can just be rough with Jokic the entire series, tire him out, make Jokic do everything for Denver, maybe Phoenix can do it. Maybe they can beat Minnesota, beat Denver, go to the Western Conference Finals. And at that point, I don't think it matters who they're playing because they're going to be off such of a high that I'm probably going to have them going to the NBA Finals at that point, whether they're playing the Clippers or Dallas or even OKC. The Phoenix is such an interesting team, but again, I can see this team being swept in this series, but I can also see them going to the NBA Finals. They have such a big range as far as where they can finish, but it all depends on what version of these star players we're going to get going forward, and can they have enough defense surrounding these scores going forward. So, as far as this first round series against Minnesota, again, a long way to go. They still have Kevin Durant, and he's come back from series deficits before. But again, this is a team that I worry about their defense and their fourth quarter offense going forward. And again, that's the most important time of the playoffs is that fourth quarter, as we saw with that Lakers game. You can play perfect first three quarters, but how does that team look in the fourth quarter? The Nuggets didn't have, or the Lakers didn't show up to play. The Suns, we have those same concerns. For number 6 with the Minnesota Timberwolves, they beat the Phoenix Suns. And again, Anthony Edwards, he looked amazing, right? He continues to be this amazing playoff performer at such a young age. It's so amazing to watch, right? And I think going forward, if they do manage to get past Phoenix, regardless, I think I said before the playoffs, Carl Anthony Towns, if I can talk, stick with me, is their X factor. And he's coming off of an injury. I worried about him going into game 1, but hey, he caught on pretty quickly and he was back to dropping 20 a game for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He is their X factor going forward. I think he's going to be attacked a lot defensively. They had him on KD for a lot of this first game, so that's an interesting matchup. I'll have to see if they stick with that going forward. But again, I think it's better than the alternative of him chasing around Grayson Allen on the three-point line. Whatever they decide to do, this is a team that had the number 1 defense in the NBA. Of course, Rudy Gobert he wasn't taken out of a playoff game for the first time, it seems like, in his career in that game 1 against the Suns. So that's a good sign for Rudy Gobert. Mike Conley played pretty good. This team has the defense and the star player to take them over the top really in any series. Of course, they were battling with that number 1 seed all year. However, outside of Anthony Edwards, my worry with this team is where is that offense going to come from? Is Karl Anthony Towns consistently going to be able to give you that offensive production to, make up for a bad night from Anthony Edwards? And if Karl Anthony Towns can't get it going, who's going to bring that offense? Naz Reid? You're gonna expect Naz Reid to get you over the top in a playoff game? Now, sure, Naz Reid could probably have one game or so where he drops 30, and of course he's that spark off the bench, being that dominant six-man that he is. But I don't know if you want to rely on Naz Reid to win you a playoff game, or at least, or a couple of playoff games down the stretch of this postseason. I don't know if that's the recipe for success, but they have the star player who's great in the playoffs, and they have the defense to win them a game against anybody here in the postseason. So for that reason, I think that if they beat Phoenix, they have the defense to line up with Denver, and of course, Rudy Gobert knows Jokic like the back of his hand. That could be an interesting second-round series. And, of course, if they win that one, it's a trend here. If you can beat Denver in the playoffs, you're going to be off of such a high. I can see you making the NBA Finals is what I'm getting at here. At number 5, we have the LA Clippers, and a big reason why they're ahead of these teams like Minnesota and Phoenix and LA is because they're on the other side of the bracket than Denver, right? And again, Denver's that good of a team. They have a target on their back for a reason that if you can just simply avoid them for a couple of rounds, it gives you a better chance to make the NBA Finals. But for the Clippers, they got a huge win without Kawhi Leonard, without the robot in Game 1 against the Dallas Mavericks. And it all started with James Harden. And I don't even want to say James Harden looked like Houston James Harden. It seems disrespectful because James Harden in Houston was just on a different stratosphere as far as a player. Of course, one of the best players we've ever seen of all time. Yes, I said it. But I'll say he looked like Brooklyn James Harden, right? A guy that turned back the clock just a little bit, but he was still dominant for the LA Clippers. It's so dominant that, Paul George had a rough first 3 quarters. But in that fourth quarter, Paul George got it going. And, of course, he ended with 22. But James Harden was the guy for this team in this first game. And, again, it was without their best player in Kawhi Leonard. If this team can play this well and James Harden can turn back the clock like this, they might not even need a guy like Paul George or like Kawhi Leonard going forward. Now, of course, you want to see Paul George be their guy and James Harden being the supplement piece going forward. But again, if James Harden plays like this, yeah, space out. Watch him go to work. But again, Russell Westbrook, I said, was going to be their X factor coming into the postseason. Can he consistently give them that spark off the bench, whether if it's, not even just scoring the ball, but rebounding, assisting, defending? Russell Westbrook's going to be their X factor going forward. And he had a really, really good game one. Zubac did as well. Zubac had a crazy first half where they were just feeding him the ball, even with guys with the star talent they have on the outside. They were feeding Zubac, and Zubac was going to work on Daniel Gafford. So shout out to him, right? He had a really good game one. This team is scary because they played this well in game one with a top 2 coach in the league in Tyronn Lue, and they still have Kawhi Leonard, a top 15 player in the world, on his way back to the game. If Kawhi Leonard can come back and just give them 20 points, it's tough to see Dallas beating this team on a nightly basis. But, of course, I'll talk about Dallas here in a moment. The Clippers, to me, I worry about when Kawhi Leonard is going to come back. Of course, I don't expect Dallas to score 8 points in a quarter ever again in this postseason. But if Kawhi Leonard comes back, it's going to really put a lot of pressure on Dallas to play perfect for the entire series. But again, Dallas has 2 guys that are used to playing perfect in the postseason. But for the Clippers, if you beat Dallas, then you go up against an inexperienced Thunder team. And then you would face Denver, more likely than not. And to get through the first 2 rounds, not as beat up as Denver, it's going to give you an advantage in that series, especially because the Clippers have the pieces. As far as if they can stay healthy, they have the pieces to match up with anybody. So of course we have to worry about James Harden, but they have the pieces to match up with anybody, especially Denver. And I'm excited to see that series in the Western Conference Finals if that is the case. But at number 4, again, might be a hot take just like the Thunder. I have the Dallas Mavericks as a top 4 seed because I still have this team going to the Western Conference Finals and matching up with Denver, of course, to see who goes to the NBA Finals. But Dallas, again, they're down 0-1, and they didn't look great in that game one. I'll give you guys that. And, of course, if you don't want to hear me out on this argument, I understand that as well because they did look ugly and they lost to a team without their best player. However, this is a team that, again, I don't expect to put up 8 points in a quarter for the remainder of this postseason. And, of course, the Dallas Mavericks did that in the second quarter, and they could just never catch back up. Now, I will say we had these worries coming into the postseason. Who's going to be that third guy for them? As Kawhi, or of course, Luka Doncic had his amazing game. Kyrie Irving, I think those 2 guys combined for 75 points. Who's going to be that third guy? Is it going to be Tim Hardaway? Is it going to be Dante Exum, right? Who's going to be that third guy to help out this team, and really take this team over the top? Because if they can get a punch from Tim Hardaway on a consistent basis, even if he's just giving them 12 to 15 points a night, that could be all that this Mavericks team needs to get over the top. Because Kyrie's automatic on offense, and Luka is more so than Kyrie, automatic on offense as well. This team has the star players, and they have the bigs now, but they just need that third score to get this team over the top. And again, they looked ugly in game one, and I know Kawhi's on the horizon of coming back. I'm almost positive Kawhi's not going to play game 2 because the Clippers, of course, they won one of these games at home. And I will say if they lost game 1 at home, I think Kawhi Leonard's return schedule speeds up a lot, all right? Probably more so than it needs to be. But winning game 1 was huge for the Clippers. I don't think we see Kawhi in game 3. So the Mavericks need to do their job. They need to steal home court, and they need to go back home with a 1-1 tie in the series. And if they can do that, I'm going to trust Luka and Kyrie in a race to 5 games, more so than a hurt Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers team. So for that reason, I think the Dallas Mavericks can beat the Clippers. I think they can beat the inexperienced Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that they had their number all regular season. And of course, going to the Western Conference Finals against Denver, that's a tough task to conquer, right? But they have the star talent to do it in Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. At number 3, we have the New York Knicks, a team that was bailed out by the referees last night, but I don't want to take away from their actual play. They did play a really, really good game from start to finish, and it ultimately led to a 2-0 lead over the Philadelphia 76ers. Brunson had a rough first half, but this team still managed to get the job done. Going forward, I don't expect Brunson to have the kind of games that he did in game 1 and game 2. We still haven't seen the best version of Brunson in the series, and he's only going to get better as it goes on. But I will say, Dante D had a great game too. OG Anunoby came onto the scene a little bit, right? This is a team that I think at this point can win 2 of the next 5 games, and we'll get to the second round of the playoffs. And if they can do that, they're going to match up against a team like the Milwaukee Bucks or the Indiana Pacers. And I like the Knicks in that series. Now, I will say, if Giannis comes back in this first round and Giannis is back to being Giannis, then it's going to be an interesting second round series against the Bucks because they have Giannis and Damian Lillard. But even then, the Knicks have the defense to compete with anybody. I'm just worried, again, same argument here. Who's going to be that second guy for them when it comes down to it? And let's say if a team in the second round, like the Bucks, they just trap Brunson every single play. Is Dante D or is Josh Hart going to be able to consistently give you that offensive production and be able to relieve the load of a guy like Jalen Brunson? Again, they've done it all season, but in the playoffs, maybe the nerves get to them. But that's just my biggest question with them. Who's going to be their second guy to help out Jalen Brunson? It was Julius Randle, but who's going to be that second guy now? Can OG tap into his Toronto days and give them 15 to 20 points a night? Can Dante D consistently shoot the ball as well as he has been and give them 20 points a night? That is my worry. Who's going to be that second guy for New York? But they have the defense and they have the star player to go to the finals and, of course, compete with anybody in a 7-game series. But the one team I think that they wouldn't beat in the 7-game series at this moment in time is the Boston Celtics, a team that has the third best net rating in NBA history. They're currently up 1-0 against the Miami Heat. And, I mean, Jimmy Butler got hurt, but they had to go through the play-in. And if the Miami Heat didn't go through the play-in, they would have Jimmy Butler. But again, that's the benefits of being the 1 seed. Injuries can happen in the play-in, and you face a team that probably shouldn't be there without their star player, and that is Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat. But again, Eric Spoelstra is such an amazing coach. They're going to make this. I wouldn't even put it past Eric Spoelstra if they find a way to get a game against this Boston team. But this Boston team has lost 3 games at home all season, and they only have 16 losses on the year. This is a Boston team that's just, again, one of the best teams of all time for a reason. They have the pieces to match up and switch with everybody. And it's hard to even see Denver beating them in a 7-game series. But this is a team that year after year has had the pieces. They just haven't been able to get over the top. They're kind of like the Dallas Cowboys in a way. But for the Celtics, I just want to see them get it done. I want to see them starting to win some of these big playoff series. And this is the year where if they can't get to the finals, it's going to be tough to trust this team at all going forward. It's hard to trust them now in the postseason, but right now they have the pieces that they can have an off night from one of their star players and still get to where they need to go. That's how talented this team is from 1 through 8. And then Joe Mazzulla has improved as a head coach this season. This Boston team, again, it's scary to think that anybody can beat them in a 7-game series from start to finish, but we want to see their star players step up and take this team over the top. For Denver, they're number 1. They're the reigning champs for a reason. They're up 2-0 against a Lakers team that played a perfect first half, but still couldn't get the job done. Why? Because Jokic is busy putting up 27 and 20 in a game 2 in the second half, really, where he had to step up and be their guy and be the best player in the world. Jamal Murray had an off night last night. Again, a terrible night for Jamal Murray, but he stepped up in that fourth quarter when his team needed him the most and put them over the top. Of course, Aaron Gordon had an off night offensively as far as his production. He was in foul trouble, but he still played a really good second half and got them over the top. Michael Porter drained like 6 threes. And again, this is on an off night for a guy like Jamal Murray, who's supposed to be their second guy, and this team still had enough to get the job done against one of the most well-rounded rosters and in the LA Lakers from top to bottom. This Nuggets team, if they beat the Lakers, which as of right now, I can't see them losing 4 out of the next 5 games. So if they beat the Lakers, they go on to face a team in the bottom half of the bracket, of course, either the Timberwolves or the Phoenix Suns. And the Nuggets, I like them in both of those series. I just do. And then they face a team, it's only going to get easier after that second round because then you face either a banged up Mavericks team, a Clippers team that may or may not be healthy, or the Oklahoma City Thunder, which they're inexperienced. I can see the Denver Nuggets going back to the NBA Finals, and I can see them matching up against Boston. It's not a fun pick at all, but I can definitely see it happening. And if that is the case, I'm going to have Denver probably coming back out on top to win back-to-back titles. First time we've seen that happen since the Golden State Warriors. But that is episode 164 in the books. Let me know what you think. Again, let me preface, we rank these teams in tiers. And, of course, we rank these teams based on looking at their playoff path. How likely are they to win the NBA Finals? Now, I do want to throw this out there before we get out of here. Tomorrow, we're going to have our final mock draft here on the channel. On Thursday, we're going to be running through basically the top 5 players at every position going into the NFL draft. And I'll throw out some other names on there as well. It's basically, if you don't know much about the draft or you just want to see my rankings, tune back Thursday. It's good to have some names in your mind and be familiar with some of these prospects going into draft night. On Friday, immediately after the draft, I'm going to get to recording and editing and uploading 2 videos. One of them is going to be day 1 winners and losers. I'll go through some of my favorite picks, some of my favorite moves as far as trades or whatever the case may be. And then losers, of course, the opposite of that. And then also on Friday, we're going to be releasing a day 2 mock draft. I'll be saying, hey, who's left on the board, and we'll get to see who teams like Carolina will get to trade for or draft rather with their two top picks in the second round, or the Cleveland Browns, my hometown Browns. Who are they going to draft in the second round? So, of course, we get to see the aftermath of day 1 and dive into day 2. But without further ado, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the NFL mock draft here on the channel. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy,